Hey guys, tonight we step into a shadowy world where medieval healers grind human bones into potions and smear corpse fat on wounds. Picture yourself in a flickering apothecary, the air thick with herbs and something unsettling, shelves grown under jars of powdered skulls and vials of congealed blood. You're not in a horror flick, this is real history, and you probably won't survive this without a queasy stomach. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're listening from. Now, let's wade into the grim world of corpse medicine. You're trudging through a muddy medieval village, circa 1300, where sickness clings like damp rot. People believe disease comes from bad air or God's wrath, and doctors are more like alchemists than scientists. Mainstream fact: the humoral theory dominates, urging balance of blood, phlegm, and bile. If your humors are off, you're toast. Enter corpse medicine, human remains used as cures. It sounds unhinged, but it's rooted in a twisted logic. If life lingers in a body after death, maybe that spark can heal the living. You smirk, thinking modern medicine's got it figured out. But back then, this was cutting edge. The quirky tidbit: some healers swore by mummy, a gooey resin from embalmed corpses, as a cure-all. You're picturing a bandaged pharaoh. But this was often fresh-ish bodies, ground up and swallowed. Gross, right? Historians still argue whether this was pure superstition or if trace minerals in corpses had actual effects. You're in a world where a headache might land you a spoonful of skull dust. Imagine the apothecaries' pitch, fresh from the crypt, guaranteed to fix your cough. You'd laugh. But the desperation of the sick makes it less funny. People are dying, and they'll try anything. You're standing in a crowded marketplace now, where vendors hawk remedies like modern-day influencers. A toothless woman offers you a vial of vital spirit distilled human blood. You gag, but she insists it's wholly drawn from executed criminals whose souls were still potent. The church doesn't bat an eye, they're too busy blessing relics. You're skeptical, but the crowd's buying it. Joke 1. It's like medieval amalgam, but instead of essential oils, it's essence of corpse. The line between medicine and magic blurs here. Healers mix prayers with potions, and you're not sure what's creepier, the ingredients or the faith in them. You're starting to see why corpse medicine took hold. Life expectancy's barely 35, and plagues sweep through like grim reapers. You'd probably down a bone smoothie if smallpox was knocking. The logic's shaky but seductive. Consume strength to gain strength. It's not just peasants. Scholars like Paracelsus, a big name in Renaissance medicine, push this stuff. You're shaking your head, but their world's a petri dish of trial and error. Joke 2. Imagine a medieval Yelp review took the mummy paste, still got the plague, 1 star. Yet, the practice spreads from backwater villages to royal courts. You're now in a dimly lit scriptorium, where monks scribble recipes for corpse cures. One calls for man's fat to soothe burns. You wince, picturing a candle made of, well, you know. The recipes are specific: age, sex, and death method matter. A young man's skull is better than an old woman's, they say. You're creeped out. But it's systematic, almost scientific for the time. The church's influence looms. They claim relics heal, so why not bodies? You're wondering how this got normalized. Spoiler: it's about to get weirder. You're still reeling from the apothecary's shelves, but now you're in a dimly lit workshop, where a healer grinds something brittle in a mortar. The air smells of dust and decay, and you realize it's a human skull, pulverized for a potion. Corpse medicine isn't just a creepy footnote, it's a full-blown system. You're about to dive into the shocking ingredients that medieval healers swore by, from blood to bones to weirder bits. The logic's grim but oddly practical, and you're starting to see how desperation birthed these cures. That vial of vital spirit from the market, it's just the beginning. Mainstream fact: medieval pharmacology leaned heavily on natural substances, but human remains were classified as materia medica, legitimate ingredients, in official texts like the Pharmacopoeia Londinensis. You're picturing a dusty tome, its pages listing skull powder alongside lavender. Healers believe human parts held unique potency, especially if harvested fresh. Blood was a favorite distilled into spiritus humanus for epilepsy or fainting spells. You're grimacing, but patients gulped it down, hoping for miracles. The quirkier tidbit, some recipes called for usnea, a moss-like growth on hanged men's skulls thought to cure nosebleeds. You're gagging, but collectors scoured gallows for this stuff. Historians still argue whether these remedies were purely symbolic or if trace elements like calcium in bones had measurable effects. You're in a world where science and superstition tangle. Imagine a healer offering you a salve of human fat for arthritis. It's warm, greasy, and nope, you're not trying it. Joke 1. It's like medieval skincare, but the organic label's a bit too literal. The process was meticulous, fat rendered like candle wax, blood boiled into syrup. You're horrified, but the precision's almost admirable. You're now at a busy execution site where crowds gather not just for justice, but for medicine. A man's just been beheaded, and an apothecary's apprentice scurries to collect dripping blood. It's not random. The condemned were prime sources. Their vital force was supposedly strongest at death. You're dodging the crowd, noticing how normal this feels to them. Healers preferred young, healthy men. Think gladiators, not grannies. Joke 2. It's like farm-to-table, but for corpses. The blood's mixed with wine or herbs, bottled and sold before it clots. You're queasy, but demand's high. Picture yourself in a noble sick room, where a physician administers bone ash for gout. The patient's rich, so the skulls from a premium corpse made a foreign soldier. Class matters even in death. Poorer folks got scraps, like grave dirt or old cemetery bones. You're sensing a hierarchy, and it's grimly fascinating. The church's shadow looms. Priests bless these cures, tying them to resurrection theology. If saints' bones heal, why not a thief's? You're skeptical. But the faithful art. The line between relic and remedy blurs, and you're wondering how far this goes. You're back in the workshop, eyeing a jar labeled mummy. It's not just Egyptian relics. Fresh bodies are mummified with pitch and herbs, then ground into powder. Swallowing it's supposed to cure bruises or fevers. You're thinking, hard pass, but it's a bestseller. Some recipes mix corpse parts with animal ones like viper flesh or cow dung. Joke 3. Medieval smoothies were the original superfood blend. Just don't check the ingredients. You're starting to grasp the scale. Every body part had a purpose. Healers weren't hacks, they were innovators in a brutal world. You're noticing patterns. Ingredients vary by region. German apothecaries love skull moss, while Italians lean on blood elixirs. Availability drives recipes. War-torn areas have surplus corpses. You're uneasy, but it's supply and demand. The creepiest part, patients often knew what they were taking and still lined up. You're imagining the taste, the gritty texture, and you'd rather face the plague. But for them, it's hope in a jar. The workshop's fire dies down, and you're left wondering how this market grew so big. You're standing in a bustling port, salt air stinging your nose, as crates of strange cargo unload from a creaking ship. Among the spices and silks, there is something darker. Mummified bodies, bound for apothecaries across Europe. You're diving into the grim commerce of the mummy trade, where human remains became a hot commodity in medieval healing. That mummy powder you saw in the workshop, it's not just local corpses anymore, it's an international industry. You're about to see how greed, desperation, and a twisted faith turned tombs into pharmacies. Mainstream fact: by the 12th century, Egyptian mummies were a prized import in Europe, valued for their supposed medicinal powers. Traders claimed the bitumen used in embalming held healing properties, and apothecaries ground entire mummies into powder. You're picturing Indiana Jones, but this was no adventure, it was a supply chain. Ships from Alexandria docked in Venice, their holds stuffed with desiccated bodies. The quirky tidbit: not all mummies were ancient. Some were freshly made, bodies of the poor or executed preserved to meet demand. You're grimacing, but fakes flooded the market. Historians still argue whether Europeans knew they were often buying counterfeit mummies or if they just didn't care. You're at the dock now, watching a merchant haggle over a wrapped corpse. He swears it's a pharaoh, but you suspect it's a peasant from Cairo, pickled last week. Joke 1. It's like medieval eBay, but with worse return policies. The trades fueled by scarcity tombs are looted dry by the 1400s, so suppliers get creative. You're dodging crates, noticing how nobody blinks at this macabre cargo. It's just business. You're trailing a caravan now, headed inland to Paris. Mummies are crushed into powder and root, mixed with myrrh to mask the stench. Apothecaries pay top dollar, think gold per ounce. You're shocked, but mummy's the medieval equivalent of penicillin. It's prescribed for everything: bruises, fevers, even heartbreak. You're imagining a doctor's note. Take 2 pinches of pharaoh, call me in the morning. Joke 2. It's the ultimate upcyclero waste all corpse. The church endorses it, claiming ancient bodies are holier. You're skeptical, but their blessing keeps the trade alive. Picture yourself in a wealthy apothecary's shop, where mummy powder's locked in a gilded case. Only the elite can afford it. Peasants settle for local bones. You're noticing class divides again, like with the premium skulls. The trade's not just European. Islamic scholars like Avicenna praised mummy in their texts, sparking demand. You're impressed by the global reach, but it's grim. Egypt's grave robbers thrive, while European ports hum with body shipments. You're wondering how many tombs are left. Spoiler, not many. You're back at the port, where a ship unloads fresh mummies from North Africa. These aren't ancient thyre bodies of slaves or prisoners, mummified on the cheap. You're horrified, but demand outstrips ethics. Some traders even fake the bitumen, using tar or pitch. Joke 3. It's like buying organic, but you're still eating corpse. You're starting to see the scaled thousands of bodies cross the Mediterranean yearly. Apothecaries don't ask questions. They just grind and sell. You're uneasy, but the market's unstoppable, driven by a belief that death can cure life. You're lingering by a stall now, where a vendor offers mummy cordial, a drink laced with the powder. You decline, but customers swear it saved their cousin's life. The trade's peak is the 1500s, but it's already messy. Supply chains falter, and fakes dilute trust. You're sensing cracks in the system, but for now, the mummy craze rules. Every jar sold is a tomb emptied, a life commodified. You're glad you're not a patient here, but you can't look away from this dark machine. You're standing in the shadow of a gallows, the creak of rope and murmur of a restless crowd filling the air. A man's just been executed, and you notice apothecaries' apprentices weaving through, buckets in hand, ready to collect what's left. You're diving into the chilling pipeline from execution grounds to apothecary shelves, where fresh corpses, especially criminals, fuel the corpse medicine craze. That blood elixir you gagged at earlier, this is its source. You're about to see how death row became a pharmacy's supply chain in medieval Europe. Mainstream fact: executions were public spectacles in the Middle Ages, often drawing crowds for entertainment and, grimly, medicine. Healers believed the freshly dead, particularly young men who died violently, retained a potent vital spirit. You're watching an apprentice sop up blood with a cloth, destined for epilepsy cures. The quirky tidbit: some apothecaries preferred the fat of hanged men scraped from bodies left to rot for salves against sprains. You're retching, but this was peak freshness, no mummy imports needed. Historians still argue whether this obsession with fresh corpses stemmed from medical theory or morbid fascination. You're closer now, the air heavy with sweat and fear. The executioner is done, but the real work begins. Assistants strip the body, carving fat and muscle for rendering. It's methodical, like butchering livestock. You're horrified, but to them, it's routine. Joke 1. It's farm-to-table medicine. Just don't ask for the recipe. Criminals were ideally young, healthy, and plentiful in war-torn Europe. Their deaths were clean in a twisted way, free of disease. You're dodging a cart hauling remains to a nearby apothecary, where they'll be boiled into potions. Picture yourself in that apothecary now, where a cauldron simmers with human fat. The smell's like rancid bacon, and you're holding your breath. This thought's mixed with wax for ointments, applied to wounds or aching joints. Patients swear it works, and you're wondering if it's placebo or something creepier. The blood's another story distilled into a syrupy spirit for fainting spells. You're imagining a medieval Red Bull, but it's way darker. Joke 2 gives you wings and nightmares. The church doesn't flinch. They claim the soul's power lingers in the body, sanctifying the practice. You're back at the gallows, noticing how the crowd's not just here for justice. Some clutch vials, hoping to buy blood on the spot. Supply is limited, so prices soar. You're seeing economics at play. Executions are scheduled, and apothecaries plan around them like farmers at harvest. In England, hangman's rope becomes a side hustle. Bits of it are sold as charms, but the body's the real prize. You're uneasy, but this is normalized. Even respectable physicians, trained at universities, prescribe these remedies. You're wondering how they sleep at night. You're trailing an apprentice to a workshop now where he sorts body parts like a grim chef. Skulls are cleaned for powder, bones charred for toothaches. The precision's chilling recipes specify the corpse's age and death method. A beheaded man's blood trumps a hanged man's, they say. You're shaking your head, but it's a science to them. Joke-free. It's like medieval meal prep, but you'd rather starve. The system's efficient bodies are processed within hours, and potions hit shelves by dawn. You're impressed in a sick way by the logistics. You're noticing regional quirks. In Germany, execution sites are nicknamed pharmacies of the poor because anyone can grab free blood. In Italy, apothecaries pay executioners under the table for first dibs. You're sensing a network, from gallows to markets, that keeps corpse medicine flowing. The creepiest part, families of the condemned sometimes sell the bodies themselves, desperate for coin. You're glad you're just passing through this world, but the line between healer and opportunist is razor-thin here. You're slipping into a candlelit royal court, where velvet-clad nobles whisper and a physician tends to a pale king. The air's thick with incense, but there's a faint metallic tang, human blood, prescribed as a tonic. You're diving into the elite's embrace of corpse medicine, where kings, popes, and high society didn't just tolerate these remedies, but championed them. That skull powder and mummy paste you've been dodging, they're not just for peasants, they're status symbols. You're about to see how the powerful turned cannibalistic cures into a gruesome flex. Mainstream fact. Prominent figures like England's King Charles II and Francis I reportedly used corpse-based remedies, with Charles even brewing his own king's drops, a tincture of human skull for vitality. You're picturing a monarch in a lab, stirring a cauldron like a grim barista. The quirky tidbit, Pope Innocent VIII allegedly drank blood from young boys in a desperate bid to cure his ailments, blurring the line between medicine and ritual. You're wincing. But this was peak prestige. Only the elite could afford such exotic treatments. Historians still argue whether these high-profile endorsements legitimize corpse medicine, or if the elite were just desperate for miracles like everyone else. You're in the king's chambers now, watching a physician sprinkle mummy powder into wine. It's a delicacy sourced from looted Egyptian tombs, and costs more than gold. You're rolling your eyes at the decadence, but the king sips it like it's fine vintage. Joke 1. It's the medieval equivalent of a $500 smoothie, just with extra corpse. The court's buzzing nobles flaunt their mummy salves like designer bags. You're trailing a papal envoy now, headed to a Vatican apothecary. The church's complicity is no secret. Pope's blessed corpse remedies, tying them to sacred relics. If a saint's bone could heal, why not a criminal's blood? You're skeptical, but the logic's ironclad to them. Clerics even supplied bodies, pulling from Rome's execution grounds. You're dodging a monk carrying a vial of holy fat, meant for a cardinal's gout. The hypocrisies thickened them cannibalism, but slather on corpse ointment. Joke 2. It's like veganism, but only on Sundays. Picture yourself at a lavish banquet, where a duchess brags about her mummy cordial curing her migraines. The elite's obsession isn't just medical, it's cultural. Corpses are exotic, like spices from the East. You're noticing how they flaunt it, dropping names of rare ingredients. This skull's from a Moorish prince. It's grotesque networking. The poor, meanwhile, scrape by with local grave dirt. You're sensing that class divide again, sharper now. Even in death, privilege reigns. You're wondering how the elite justified this while preaching morality. You're in a royal library now where scholars like Paracelsus fuel the craze. His books, revered by kings, call human remains divine medicine. You're flipping through a tome, its recipes blending alchemy and anatomy. One suggests blood from a ruddy youth for longevity. You're grossed out, but the elite lap it up, funding apothecaries to keep supplies flowing. The mummy trade you saw at the port, it's bankrolled by these courts. Joke 3. It's like Patreon, but for grave robbers. You're starting to see the power dynamics royalty sets trends, and the masses follow. You're back in the court, where a physician defends corpse medicine to a skeptical noble. He cites ancient texts. Galen of Isenon claims it's science, not superstition. You're not buying it, but the noble nods impressed. The elite's faith in these cures shapes policy. Execution rates climb to meet demand for fresh bodies. You're uneasy, picturing the gallows you left behind. This isn't just medicine, it's a system, propped up by wealth and dogma. You're glad you're not sipping that wine, but you can't unsee the king's eager gulp. You're wandering through a quieter world now, where the clamor of execution grounds and royal courts feels distant. The apothecary shelves are less crowded, and that eerie tang of corpse medicine is fading from the air. You're diving into the decline of this disturbing practice, tracing why medieval Europe slowly turned away from grinding skulls and sipping blood. The mummy jars and gallows potions you've been dodging are losing their grip, but it's not a clean break. You're about to see how science, skepticism, and shifting beliefs topple the centuries-old obsession. Mainstream fact. By the late 17th century, the rise of empirical medicine, spurred by figures like William Harvey and his work on blood circulation, began challenging medieval theories like humorism that underpinned corpse medicine. You're picturing a physician tossing out a vial of vital spirit, muttering about outdated nonsense. The quirky tidbit: some apothecaries clung to corpse remedies into the 1700s, selling mummy powder as a niche folk cure even as doctors scoffed. You're smirking, but holdouts swore it still worked. Historians still argue whether corpse medicine faded due to scientific progress or growing moral unease about cannibalism. You are in a London apothecary now, circa 1680, where a young doctor debates an old herbalist. The herbalist defends skull powder for epilepsy, but the doctor cites new anatomy texts, calling it barbaric. You're nodding along, but the herbalist's got loyal customers. Joke 1. It's like clinging to a flip phone when smartphones hit the scene. The tide's turning. Universities teach dissection over dogma, and patients start demanding modern cures like quinine. You're strolling through a marketplace, noticing fewer corpse-based wares. The mummy trade's collapsing. Egypt's tombs are empty, and fakes think tar-slathered drifter shave soured trust. You're relieved, but it's not just supply issues. The Enlightenment's dawning, and reason's the new rock star. Thinkers like John Locke question everything, including why anyone's eating mummies. You're dodging a vendor pushing genuine bone ash, but his stall's half empty. Joke 2. It's like trying to sell NFTs after the crypto crash. People want evidence now, not ancient recipes. Picture yourself in a church where sermons are shifting. The clergy, once cozy with corpse cures, now preach against unnatural practices. You're hearing whispers of cannibalism taboos, absent when relics rule. The church's pivot stings. Apothecaries lose their holy stamp of approval. You're watching a priest bless a new hospital, not a jar of human fat. The public's mood sours too. Executions still draw crowds, but scooping blood feels wrong. You're sensing a cultural shift, like when plastic straws got cancelled. Ethics are catching up slowly. You're in a scholar's study now, where dusty tomes on corpse medicine gather cobwebs. New medical journals mock the old ways, calling them Gothic relics. You're flipping through a 1690s pamphlet that trashes mummy powder as placebo at best, grave robbing at worst. The elite, once corpse medicine's biggest fans, jump ship kings swap kings drops for mercury pills. You're wincing at the trade-off, but it's progress. Joke 3. It's like ditching kale smoothies for energy drinks. Still weird, just less dead. Apothecaries pivot to plant-based remedies, and corpse recipes vanish from pharmacopoeias. You're noticing regional lags. Rural Germany still dabbles in skull moss, and Italian folk healers sneak blood elixirs to loyalists. But the mainstreams don't. Corpse medicine's a relic, like leeches or alchemy. You're relieved, but it's not all rosy. New drugs like opium bring their own messes. You're reflecting on the gallows and mummies, wondering if the decline's a win or just a swap for different weirdness. The apothecaries' fire dims, and you're glad to leave its grim brews behind, but the story's not over yet. You're stepping out of the apothecary's fading glow, the scent of herbs, and decay now just a memory. The world feels cleaner, but there's an eerie aftertaste, like a ghost of those corpse potions lingers in the air. You're diving into the legacy of corpse medicine, exploring how its shadow stretches into modern times. The mummy powder and blood elixirs are gone, but their echoes ripple through science, ethics, and even today's wellness fads. You're about to see how this gruesome chapter left marks we can't quite scrub away. Mainstream fact: the study of human remains in medieval corpse medicine laid early groundwork for anatomy and pharmacology, influencing modern medical practices like organ transplants. You're picturing a surgeon today, slicing with precision that started with those grim apothecary knives. The quirky tidbit: some modern alternative remedies, like placenta pills or bone broth, carry a faint whiff of corpse medicines consumed to heal logic. You're raising an eyebrow, but wellness influencers sound a bit like those old herbalists. Historians still argue whether corpse medicine's legacy is purely scientific or if it warped our ethical boundaries around the body. You're in a sleek lab now, where researchers study tissue samples. It's worlds away from the gallows, but the impulse to harvest human parts for healing feels familiar. Joke 1. It's like corpse medicine got a glow-up some vibe, better PR. Organ donation saves lives, but you're wondering where the line is. Medieval healers saw bodies as resources. Modern medicine's not so different, just more sterile. You're strolling through a museum, eyeing a display of 17th century apothecary jars. The label skull powder mummy resin read like horror props, but they spark debates. Bioethicists cite corpse medicine when wrestling with issues like cadaver research or black market organ trades. You're chilled, remembering the mummy ships and execution carts. The past taught us to innovate, but also to exploit. Joke 2. It's like history saying, learn from me, but don't copy my homework. You're glad ethics boards exist, but loopholes still let bodies become commodities. Picture yourself scrolling social media, where biohacking gurus push supplements with vague vitality claims. It's not blood syrup, but the hype feels like that marketplace vendor's pitch. You're smirking at the parallel shamans still chase quick fixes, just with fancier branding. The Enlightenment killed corpse medicine, but its ghost haunts our obsession with longevity. You're reflecting on the kings and popes, guzzling mummy for power. Today's elite chase stem cells or cryonics. Joke 3. Same energy, different budget. You're wondering if we've really outgrown the medieval mindset. You're in a quiet library now, flipping through a book on medical history. Corpse medicine's decline birthed rigorous science, but it also left scarce distrust in medicine, fear of exploitation. You're thinking of vaccine hesitancy or organ donor opt-outs. The gallows taught people to question who profits from bodies. It's a messy legacy. Progress with baggage. You're grateful for modern safeguards, but the past whispers warnings. Every breakthrough, from transplants to lab-grown tissue, owes a debt to those grim experiments. You're uneasy, but it's a reminder to stay vigilant. As the library fades, you're left with a strange respect for those medieval healers. They groped in the dark, blending faith and desperation, and somehow nudged us forward. Their world was brutal, but ours isn't spotless. You're ready to let this story rest, its lessons tucked away like a half-forgotten dream. The air grows softer now, the sharp edges of history smoothing into a gentle haze. You're no longer in that grim workshop or crowded port. You're somewhere calm, where the only sound is your steady breathing. The jars of mummy powder dissolve into shadows, the gallows creak fades to silence. You've walked through a strange, unsettling past, but it's time to let it drift away. Picture a cool breeze carrying off the last traces of those potions, leaving only the quiet of your own space. Your eyelids are heavy, the world slowing to a whisper. Let the story slip like sand through your fingers and sink into rest. Sleep well, dreamer.